I'm really excited to be here this afternoon to talk to you about dynamic pricing for ancillaries. So if we go back in time, and a few presentations have already covered this, to the 90s, Pros, Sabre, Ideas, other companies brought technology straight out of the computer lab into this industry, and it had a huge impact. Some of you were there. I've heard the stories, read the case studies about how big of an impact dynamic pricing had and all the fares and all the things we've been talking about today back then. But something else changed in the 90s. This is the first website where you could book a ticket on direct from an airline. And it really changed how travelers interacted with travel. So today, travel is 44% of travel transactions are digital. And part of the point of this is that there is so much data in that, as Anina was saying earlier, 50 times more data than there was even 10 years ago. What are we doing with that data, and shouldn't that data be involved in how we price? Well, it turns out we're doing pricing in a lot the same ways, so similar tools, and it's evolved, but it's evolved incrementally. And so if you think about how would you do this today if you're starting fresh, right? If you didn't have the constraints that you had before, what would this look like? And you don't have to think about it or imagine it because it's been done, right? Uber, Amazon, other companies had a fresh slate to start from. And these companies adopted innovations like artificial intelligence and machine learning in order to price more accurately, more rapidly, and deliver on that continuous dynamic pricing promise that you've heard talked about today. Well, that's where Perfect Price comes in. So Perfect Price is the dynamic pricing company. We use artificial intelligence and machine learning to deliver on that promise. And you might ask, well, how do we know that you do it, right? It's one thing to say you work like Uber and Amazon. It's another thing to actually deliver on that promise. Well, we happen to be advised by the guy who wrote the algorithms at Uber and Amazon, Bob Phillips, who many of you probably know and at least have read his book in the past. And so by using that, we've been able to really address the complexity issue. And I think many of the presentations today talked about how complex this world is going to be. I have a newfound appreciation for how difficult it is to actually deliver that upgrade or that lounge access when you bundle something together and now have to work with legacy systems to deliver it. But in a few years, we're going to be past that. It's going to be easy to deliver it. That's going to be an everyday thing. And now you're going to be dealing with billions of prices, right? And dealing with billions of prices is a different problem than dealing with filed fares. Because it's continuous, it's infinite, it's an infinite set. It's just much harder to get a grasp on that. And you move from managing prices to managing models and how one prices. And so we've done this before. We've got a lot of experience in the space. The example that I think is most relevant from a science standpoint is Getaround. So Getaround's a peer-to-peer car rental company, and the depth of this problem is incredibly complex because you have different cars, and by different I mean like Tesla to Porsche to Honda Civic on the same street corner in cities around the world. And they need to set prices every 15 minutes. And so solving that problem with anything other than machine learning and artificial intelligence just isn't possible. And they came to us because they tried and they weren't able to do it. One of the things that was amazing to us is how big of an impact getting pricing right has. I don't have to tell anybody in the room how big of an impact it can have. Although I think many of you are kind of rolling your eyes right now because 3.7 times revenue is a big number, right? You think, well, that couldn't possibly happen. We run things way too efficiently for that to happen. And yet I've heard stories today from the channels about how just adding photos to shopping results can increase conversion rate by 20%. And you would think this is an efficient market. How could you possibly get 20% higher conversion in such an efficient market? But it turns out that's happening. So I think one of the things we'd like to work with more of you on is testing and proving out the promise. So I'm happy to be here today and thank ATPCO for their support because we couldn't do this without them. I think when you talk about billions of prices, obviously nobody's going to enter them by hand. So being able to work with the industry leader to actually deliver on that value, not to mention the data that it takes to power that. So thank you very much for listening. If you'd like to know more about us, I'm happy to talk to you and answer questions later. And right now, I'm happy to answer questions from Sean. And done early, too.
Yeah, I'm impressed. Great job, Alex. So I think it was fairly self-explanatory what Beyond Pricing is doing, and you're in other sectors of travel too, like the vacation short-term rental space. So one of the things that some of the people at the beginning of this program said is that we want to try to get ideas outside of travel. So is there any kind of metaphor or analogy from something outside of travel that's kind of like an equivalent impact of what it is that you're talking about, being able to use artificial intelligence to analyze pricing? Is there something from outside?
Yeah, so raise your hand if you use Netflix, if you've ever used Netflix. So most of you, or at least all that are paying attention. So a few years ago, about a decade ago, they did what was called the Netflix Prize. A friend of mine ran it. He was the prize master. And it was a competition to improve recommendations. And so teams from all over the world applied different techniques to forecast what you would want to watch next. And the winning team took a totally different approach. They used supervised machine learning. And they looked at what people like you watched. Right? So instead of looking at what actors are in it, what genre is it, is it a rom-com, is Harrison Ford in it, right? They looked at what did people like you watch, and they dramatically outperformed any other solution. And I think when you think about everything in the conversations we're having today, whether it's pricing or bundling or recommendations, it's the same, right? You're not managing the different features and the factors and having a human understand it. You're just letting the algorithm understand it.
So traditional revenue management sort of looked at certain sets of factors, and now you're talking about how you need to look at new factors, new approaches to solving that problem, and it's sort of similar to how Netflix, I remember back in the original, you could actually go online and like fill out the survey at the university.
And I think that that really is it. I mean, if you look at all the work that revenue managers do today, like it's a tremendous amount of work. And that, as one of the slides talked about earlier, that's only on 150 million prices a day. Mm-hmm. When you up that to 150 billion prices a day, it starts to be too tough to keep up with, and you need to look at a different way of managing it.
Because you finished early, I want to add a little extra time. So just when you have all this data, that then creates a problem if you want to be able to figure out for benchmarking what else is out there. All these dynamically generated offers are now outside of the typical fair filing. Do you somehow connect back in to help people like sort of plan and understand what the big benchmark prices are?
Yeah, so that is definitely getting into unexplored territory, because before using software like Pros and the other software that's out there, that's a major part of it is do my filed fares line up with the rest of the market. And if you look at Uber and Lyft, there's no way you could possibly, as Uber, go look at every Lyft price in every market every 5 minutes, because you can open your phone and watch them change, literally in real time, right? And so by using AI and machine learning, you're able to adapt to different strategies. So you're not saying, what percentage of my fares are misaligned with the market, or where am I underpriced or overpriced, or what price premium am I at? You're looking at what is the consumer doing, are they or whatever channel I'm selling into. Are they buying, are they not buying? And that becomes a much more scalable way of managing your pricing strategy.
Okay, thank you, Alex, for your presentation. Appreciate it. Alex Shartsis from Perfect Price.